Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to make this mixed media art caddy or silverware caddy using mixed media art journaling techniques and napkin decoupage. A little while ago I created this page using the napkin Daisies blue, and while I had that napkin out I looked up at this caddy that has been sitting on my desk primed with Kills 2. It's been like that for 2 years. So I gave it a fresh coat of Kills, and I am going to decoupage this Daisies blue napkin on here. So I'm just getting the rough measurements for the caddy, and I'm going to cut 3 strips. Now, I've already used some of the napkin on that art journal page. And this is what I had left. So I want the exact same pattern because I'm going to connect them at the ends as I go around the caddy. So I'm going to show you some ways of doing that. Now here's one thing. I don't want the seam in the middle of my caddy. I want it on the sides where it's going to be least visible. So if I don't line it up perfectly, no one's the wiser. It's not going to be front and center. So once I have that positioned, and of course I've taken off the 2 excess plies, I'm putting a coat of fluid matte medium. You can use Decoupage or Mod Podge if that's what you prefer. My #1 adhesive is Liquitex fluid matte medium. And I'm putting a coat underneath it and I'm going on top. Be careful, the napkin gets rather fragile at this stage, especially going around the corners. So here you're going to see me match up. This is why I cut the exact same patterning. Now I'm cutting a V out so with the handle, it'll go around the handle at the top, and you can see that daisy, I've perfectly matched it on the seam. Now I know that I'm planning to overpaint on the daisy. So if it's not exactly 100%, don't worry, we've got that covered. So I'm just dry fitting this, and once everything is working, I'm using my fluid matte medium and getting it all done. First I'm putting the ends so that it holds, and then I let that dry, and then I do the rest of the napkin. Now you'll note that where I seamed it and I overlapped it slightly darker blue. We solved that problem too. So once that's dry, and I'm not going to rip it, I'm gluing the rest of this part of the napkin down. A good napkin to use is one with an all over pattern that does repeat, or that you can fill in. You'll see what I mean. Gluing that down. Now I'm embracing the wrinkles. I'm not trying too hard. I'm not using the saran wrap trick, putting the saran wrap on and getting rid of the wrinkles, because I think those wrinkles add to the finished product, and I like that look. So now I have the piece, the last little piece. So I'm finding where one of them can overlap and with the exact pattern, and I'm using that. And this time, instead of a straight edge, I'm ripping it to get that deckled edge. That's going to make the overlap less noticeable. I thought maybe I could rub off this part of the napkin underneath so that wouldn't necessarily be there. That didn't work, or I didn't give it enough effort. So I'm lining that up, putting the fluid matte medium on, and overlapping to make a perfect match. And it's a little bit darker there, but as I said, I changed my plan because originally I was just going to overpaint the daisies. I ended up painting over the entire napkin, truly making it my own. Now, this didn't match perfectly because it's not a full set. So I'm gessoing out, I'm using white gesso to cover up some of the flowers that don't match. And then when I lay it over, I've basically fudged it, I guess. And again, I'm ripping it to get that deckled edge. And I just want to make sure there's some daisies there. There's no over, I'm not going one on top of another. Once the gesso's dry, I'm going to glue that part down as well, cutting out around the handle. Now, once this is all glued down, I did let it get completely dry because I am going to overpaint the entire napkin, and I wanted it to be completely dry. I played with the idea of maybe putting some of the napkin on the handle. I chose not to, but that's an option you have. To further seal the napkin onto the caddy and to prepare it for the overpainting, I'm putting a coat of clear gesso. I'm not sure this is necessary. Now here I did a rough copy. I glued the napkin down, and you can see I've colorized the background as well as overpainted the daisies. And that's what I'm going to do on the caddy. And the reason I'm doing that is in my studio, it's more teal than baby blue. This color matches my entire house. And I'm going to get that background using Prussian blue and bright aqua green, both from Liquitex Basics. Now you want these to be watery on your palette. So I've sprayed water on there, and there'll be more about how I mix it and blend it with the thing later on. There's a close-up. I'm kind of learning as I go, and once again you get to benefit. So every time I'm using a round brush or a small angle brush, you can play around with what you work best. You can also use a fine line brush to get into some of these tighter areas. And I kind of go in between several brushes depending on what I'm doing. Now, what's really key here is you want it watery. So I've got the Prussian blue, I've got where the Prussian blue and the aqua meet, and that makes another kind of tone, and then the bright aqua green. And every time I dip in, I'm dipping into a different part of those colors and applying it wet into wet into wet. This is going to give that watercolory look, and so some areas of the background are going to be darker, some are going to be more aqua, some are going to be a blend. Now this may seem like this would take forever, but it really doesn't. And I suggest that you start on the end, not on the front, or the two fronts of it, the front and back, the long sides, because you'll find your groove. So if you make any mistakes while you're experimenting and getting used to it, they're going to be on the side where they're going to be least noticeable. But this really is super easy. I put on my audiobook and I'm listening to it, and I find this very, very zen-like. So I don't show all of this, and I do speed it up now, but you can see how I'm getting different hues of color. Now, because you've seen me wiping it off, that is possible because it's completely dry and there's a coat of the clear gesso. And, I think the fluid matte medium works as well to enable you to lift off the acrylic should you get it in the wrong place. Now, I know I'm overpainting all the daisies, so I'm not too worried if I'm losing some of the preciseness. Once it's dry, you can go back in and add more color if that's what you prefer. because it's blue in the background, if I did a pink and, you know, pink and the blue, I might have gotten a purple tone in there if that was the color of my studio or my kitchen. I use this as an art caddy. It's going to hold my brushes, my palette knives, my sponges, my blending foams. But you could use it for silverware. You could use it for condiments to take out to the patio. And there's pictures of the finished project showing two ways, if you have it as a kitchen caddy or as an art caddy. This I picked up, I believe I got it at Walmart 2-3 years ago. But you can get these at thrift stores. I've seen them there. You can get them probably at the dollar stores. Now here I'm mixing up the paint, and this is what I realized as I was going. You want to make sure that you get it fully combined. Use a larger brush, squish the paint down, and fully blend it. You don't want globs of straight up pigment because that's going to be really dark or opaque on when you're painting. Now some paints are easier to blend. The bright aqua liquefied very, very quickly. The Prussian blue did not. So different brands of paint, different colors of paint will take less or more. And there you can see I've got the straight up Prussian blue, and then there's the mixed Prussian blue with the bright aqua in the middle, and then just the straight bright aqua. And the Prussian blue was very difficult to mix. There was lots of little globs there, and I didn't want that to be straight dark Prussian blue for my background. So I'm taking the time to do that. So now that the entire background is painted, and it is more teal than what's being shown here, I'm loving the darker background. And now I'm ready to overpaint the daisies. And again, you can use a small angle brush, a small liner brush, or a round brush. And all you're going to use is white gesso. It's thinner than the white acrylic paint. You want something that's a little bit runny, and I'm globbing it on, and then I just paint it where the daisy is. And I'm using the napkin design as a guide. I'm not getting caught up in making it exactly perfect. I might add petals, I might change the shape of the petals, and truly every one of these now, even though it's a repeating pattern, is going to be somewhat different because I'm not trying to make it exactly the same. Sometimes I go from the center of the flower out and I push down on the brush, and sometimes I go from the outside of the petal in. I just like the variation of what that gives me, but you want to put a little pressure on the brush, and you can always go back after you've put it and after it dries, like I'm doing here, and making it more opaque. But I like it too, like, so some areas are globby, so this is adding texture as well as opaqueness to the daisies. It's brightening them up. And yes, there are an awful lot of daisies, but again, I thoroughly enjoy this process. And the daisies, especially on this pattern, are really easy to learn this overpainting technique on. They're very forgiving. Every once in a while, with the thin brushes, you want to clean them all out. It kind of gets globbed into the hairs, and you don't get it precise. So I find if you clean them out, you end up with a better end product. If you look at daisies in real life, the petals are not all perfectly symmetrical and balanced. You know, some bugs have taken bites out of them, or they've grown in an awkward way. So try to go a little bit faster without overthinking how perfect it is. And again, I'm not going to show you all of this. I just want you to get the technique. Like doing the background painting and the overpainting on the daisies probably in real time took about 2 hours. But like I said, I put on my audiobook and I just go. Now here I had gotten the napkin, got in some paint, but I wasn't too worried because, well, I knew I was going to overpaint it, and I've fixed the problem. So if you've overpainted when you've done the background and the blue went on the daisies, no worries, you're going to adjust to it. Now I'm just ready doing some of the detailing work. I wanted to put that Prussian blue on the bottom and the top, the trim of this caddy. And I end up painting the handle, a combination of the bright aqua and the Prussian blue. And I use a makeup sponge to put that on. Now to add some shine and more texture to the center, I'm taking the stencil butters from the Crafters Workshop. This one's gamboge, and I'm globbing it on the middle so that it's really texturized. And then I'm coming in and putting some of the terracotta one on. Now what I discovered is you want to do this in 2 steps, not as like what you're seeing me doing here. Put the gamboge on, let that dry, then come in and almost dry brush the terracotta on the centers. That way it gives that little bit of highlight in the terracotta on the centers. But I find the gamboge is very pearlescent and the terracotta isn't as much. So I'm globbing it on, and it's really texturized and it looks very 3D almost in some places. And I love how it shines. There's a close-up of the flowers at the end. So I love how you can take a napkin and make it your own, tweak it so that the colors are perfect for your decor. So there is the caddy all done. Now I will give this, once I'm done, I will give it a coat of Minwax polyacrylic satin varnish because I want to seal it because it's on my desk and it's going to get splattered and mucked up, and if it's varnished I'll be able to wipe that off or clean that off easily. Also, because it's sitting on my desk, it will get splattered with gold or black at some point in time. I've got splatters on the walls. Don't tell my husband. So here I'm just splattering it with gold, but you could do black or white if that's what you prefer. I chose not to put a sentiment on here. I could have put the word oopsie daisies across, or create. You could put words, whatever you wish. And I'm giving it a dry. So here it is with all my art supplies. There's 3 sections on the one side, and I put a cardboard divider in the other side, the long side, so that I could put my blending foams on the one side and my makeup sponges on the other. And here it is set up as a silverware caddy. How would you use this caddy? Go through your napkins, find a napkin that's going to work. Until next time, go get creative.